Dave, good morning. Yesterday, Dan Senor was my guest. He previewed a event you were going to hold with him. How did that go? Because I think Dan Senor is really one of the most influential podcasters in America.
Yeah, it was great, Hugh. Good to be with you. Yeah, we had a series of events yesterday. We started with an event with the Jewish community in Harrisburg, and then came to Philadelphia, and we had probably 300 people in a synagogue in Lower Merion, and we talked about the challenges right now with the brutal attacks on Israel, anti-Semitism, you know, growing across our country disgracefully on our campuses, and we talked about the need for leadership and moral clarity. And sadly, my opponent, Bob Casey, was the deciding vote for the Iran deal, which has allowed Iran to underwrite all this terrorism around the Middle East and around the world. But he's also not been a strong voice when these horrible things have happened on our nation's campuses. So it was a very interesting conversation because Dan was able to draw that out from the audience. And we talked about the need for a real change in Pennsylvania.
Now, Dave McCormick, and I'll start calling you Senator McCormick elect or Senator elect McCormick come November. I do believe that the votes of Friends of Israel, Jewish and non Jewish, matter a lot. I think they're shifting to Donald Trump. But I also don't think Arab Americans are going against Republicans because they don't like Iran any more than we do, right?
Well, that's the one thing that's almost unified many countries across the Middle East is Iran poses a really an existential threat to the region and to the world. The possibility of Iran getting nuclear weapons, the terrorism it's funding, and so yes, the one of the biggest concerns of countries like Saudi Arabia, the participants of the Abraham Accords, is the fact that Iran's on the rise and is promoting this radical extremism and terrorism across the region. So this is a challenge and a threat created by weakness, the weakness of the Obama administration, followed by the weakness of the Biden administration. And think about it. A lot of these horrible things didn't happen under the watch of President Trump. I think in large part because our adversaries feared that America would respond decisively. Under Trump, we killed Soleimani, which I think put fear in the hearts of terrorist leaders across the Middle East. Under President Trump, we had the Abraham Accords, which my wife participated in as part of the team that negotiated those. This is a moment where we need to have strength, and when we don't have strength, guys like Putin, Iran, China, they all test us, they all threaten us because they think it's a moment that America's weak and that they can take advantage of it.
Now, Dave McCormick, I think Senator Casey may be the weakest Democrat out there. And I was not surprised, though the country was, to see in the New York Times Siena poll the day that it came out, there came out a poll that showed you were tied with Bob Casey. Now, I know there is such a thing called polling response bias. So Republicans tend to be 2 or 3 points ahead of where they are in a poll because they tend to under respond to polls. It's not about the sample. The pollsters are doing the best they can. They're not trying to load the dice. Just Republicans, more generally than Democrats, don't answer. Were you surprised to be tied this early in this race?
Well, I always knew from the very first day that this would be a very tight race when I decided to jump into it, and I also knew that I was the underdog and the stakes were very high. But as I go across our great Commonwealth, I have a simple message, which is this is a race between strength and weakness. Bob Casey's been a very weak senator. I've been a strong leader my whole life in the military and business, creating jobs, and between common sense policies and a radical liberal agenda that's going to destroy our country. And I really believe that in my heart. And with Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket, you have someone who could not be more extreme, could not be more out of step with Pennsylvania. And in Bob Casey, you have a sure thing. You have a sure vote. Someone who voted 99% of the time with Biden Harris, someone who voted 100% of the time with Harris on tie breaking votes, and someone who will support a radical agenda to end the use of fossil fuels, ban fracking, legalize illegal immigration, give amnesty to the legal immigrants, federal benefits, mandatory buybacks of guns. The list goes on and on. And those positions are simply out of touch. So when people say this is the most important election of our lifetimes, in Pennsylvania, what it means is a vision that's completely out of step with Pennsylvania, versus a set of common sense policies that are consistent with where Pennsylvania needs to go and where America needs to go. And I think that's
Now,
beginning to become clear to the voters, and that's why I think the polls are closing.
I want people to know your website, davemccormickpa.com, davemccormickpa.com. It's a great place to invest in the future of the country. I also want to thank you for the roundtable you held with the families of people who died from fentanyl overdoses. Every time we did an event at the Nixon Library, we had not protesters, we just had awareness groups asking us to ask our guests about fentanyl. You went and did a roundtable with these families. I don't think I've seen anyone else have the courage to do that because it's heartbreaking. Why and when and how did that go?
We did this a week ago last Friday at my home in Pittsburgh, where we had 4 sets of parents come and talk about the loss of fentanyl. And as a father of 6 daughters, I honestly, Hugh, almost couldn't get through it. Just the tragedy. And what you discover is that most of these kids didn't even know they were ingesting fentanyl. It was through recreational drug use. It was through things that they thought were just going to help them study through the night. And what's this has become so pervasive. We lost 4,000 people in Pennsylvania, and it's due to a number of factors, but a primary factor is the wide open borders where the cartels are pushing fentanyl into our communities. It takes a couple days to get from the southern border to here. And the statistic, Hugh, which you will appreciate more than anybody, is last year in America, we lost about 115,000 people from fentanyl. In 8 years of war in Vietnam, we lost about 58,000 people. We had 2 Vietnams last year in America because of the scourge of fentanyl and those cartels pushing this poison into our communities. We have to be radical in terms of taking on this threat. We got to secure the border, but we also have to use, in my opinion, on day one, I'd be in the Senate saying we should designate the cartels as a terrorist organization and use our military in a very thoughtful, selective way, our drones, our special operations, to take out the cartels, to take out those distribution networks. It is an enormous challenge that's destroying families, destroying our communities. And it was a heartbreaking discussion last Friday.
Well, I compliment you for having it. Now, I want to play for you an Elon Musk comment from an interview he did yesterday. It's only 19 seconds long, Dave McCormick, but you are a very successful businessman like Elon Musk. I want to know if you agree with this sentiment. Can we play for
I think actually the reality is that if we get rid of nonsense regulations and shift people from the government sector to the private sector, we will have immense prosperity, and I think we will have a golden age in this country. And it'll be fantastic.
I believe that, Dave McCormick. If we can get the 2.89 million federal employees down to a reasonable number and to stop their interference with wealth generators, this country will explode with wealth. What do you think?
Absolutely. When I go across Pennsylvania, small businesses, farms, wherever I go, the regulatory state, the compounding effect of regulations is destroying free enterprise. We've got to reel that back. President Trump had a great idea when he was president previously that for every new regulation, we should take 2 away. I've put out a plan where we need to not only have much more discretion in terms of being able to hire and fire federal employees, but I think we also need to move these departments out into the country. And that's one of the many ways to shrink the footprint of our government. I propose, for example, the Department of Energy should go to Pittsburgh because the people who are regulating industry should be among the people with whom they're regulating. And we need to have some radical shakeup in Washington. One of the benefits of being an outsider, someone who's been in the business world for 25 years, is I know how to bring about change. I tell people on the campaign trail, Hugh, if you like the status quo, I am not your guy. Do not vote for me. Vote for Bob Casey. If you want to shake things up, you want to change Washington, I'm a guy who can do that.
Dave McCormick, thank you. Keep coming back. All of you out there, visit davemccormickpa.com because the money flooding in, the dark money flooding in against Dave McCormick is immense, but your small dollar donations matter a great deal.